In 2150, Earth's deep space monitoring stations picked up something strange. At first, the technicians thought it was just another glitch in the system. Minji Lee, a junior officer at the Tokyo tracking facility, was the first to notice the pattern. It wasn't random noise. "Sir, I think you should see this," she called to her supervisor. The blip on her screen was moving in a controlled way, slowing down as it approached our solar system. Within hours, every major space agency was watching the object. It was huge, nearly 2 kilometers long, and clearly artificial. News spread quickly despite government attempts to prevent panic. Social media exploded with theories ranging from doomsday predictions to hopeful first contact scenarios. The object bypassed Mars and established a perfect orbit around Jupiter, precisely positioned between Ganymede and Europa. For 3/10 days, world leaders gathered while military forces went on high alert. Then, without warning, the transmission came. "We are the Arcturians," the message stated in flawless English, appearing simultaneously on communication systems worldwide. "Our world faces extinction. We come seeking humanity's help." The voice was strangely melodic, almost like it was singing the words. Experts confirmed the message originated from the Jupiter object. President Tae-ho Kim addressed the United Nations emergency session the following day. "We face an unprecedented moment in human history," he said, his hands gripping the podium tightly. "An alien civilization has reached out to us not as conquerors, but as supplicants." The Arcturians sent more detailed communications explaining their situation. Their home planet, Arcturus IV, was suffering catastrophic environmental collapse due to radiation from their aging star. Despite having mastered interstellar travel and energy technology beyond human understanding, they lacked the skills to save their dying world. "We have observed Earth for many decades," their ambassador explained through video transmission. "Your species has faced countless environmental disasters and adapted. This resilience is unknown to us. We need your expertise." The first images of the Arcturians stunned everyone. They weren't the little green men of old science fiction. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies resembled crystalline structures that reflected light in hypnotic patterns. They moved with fluid grace despite their seemingly rigid forms. The United Nations debated for weeks. Some nations pushed for immediate assistance, seeing both humanitarian and technological opportunities. Others feared a trap, arguing no species would travel light years just to ask for environmental consultants. Captain Jiwoo Park wasn't interested in politics. A veteran of the Mars colony crisis of 2139, she had developed a reputation for staying calm when everything went wrong. When the Secretary General called her to Seoul for a private meeting, she knew what was coming. "We need someone who understands survival," he told her, sliding a tablet across the table. "Someone the Arcturians will respect." 3 weeks later, Jiwoo stood in the shuttle bay of the UNSC Resilient with her hastily assembled team. 15 specialists in environmental engineering, crisis management, and xenobiology. None of them had expected to be the first humans to meet an alien civilization. "Remember," Jiwoo told them as they prepared to board the Arcturian transport vessel, "they may be advanced, but they're scared. Fear makes any species unpredictable." The transport didn't look impressive from the outside, just a smooth oval pod with no visible propulsion. Inside was a different story. The walls seemed alive, shifting with patterns that responded to human movement. There were no controls, no seats, no recognizable technology. "Please remain calm," came a voice from everywhere and nowhere. "Transit will complete in 17 minutes. Suho Kang, the team's physicist, laughed nervously. They could have at least installed windows. When the pod docked with the Arcturian ship, the team fell silent. Through the opening door, they could see a vast interior space that defied the ship's external dimensions. Crystalline structures grew from floor to ceiling, pulsing with soft light. And waiting for them, arranged in a perfect semicircle, stood 7 Arcturians. "Welcome," said the central figure, its body shifting colors as it spoke. "I am Horizon Song, speaker for the journey. We have traveled 43 of your years to reach you." Jiwoo stepped forward, fighting every instinct that told her to be afraid. I'm Captain Jiwoo Park of the United Nations Space Command. We've come to hear your request in person. The alien's colors brightened. We watched your world recover from the Great Warming, survive the pandemic era, rebuild after resource wars. You faced extinction multiple times but found ways to continue. Our civilization has never known such hardship. We evolved in perfect balance with our world. Until now. As the Arcturians spoke, the walls around them transformed into images of their homeworld, a beautiful blue-green planet orbiting a swollen red star. 3 generations ago, our sun began to change. The radiation has poisoned our atmosphere. We have tried all possible solutions within our understanding, but we cannot adapt quickly enough. Jiwoo noticed something in the alien's tone, an emotion she hadn't expected to recognize in a being so different from humans. It was shame. You've mastered space travel, she said. Why ask us for help? The alien's colors darkened to deep blue. Because the technology to travel between stars is simple compared to changing who we are. That is humanity's true achievement. Your ability to change to hope when logic says hope is futile. We need to learn this from you before our civilization dies. The journey to the Arcturian city ship took just under an hour, though Jiwoo's team lost all sense of time inside the transport pod. When they finally emerged, the sight before them made even the most seasoned space travelers gasp. They stood at the edge of what appeared to be an entire ecosystem contained within the massive vessel. Crystalline structures intertwined with something like plant life, creating a landscape that stretched farther than seemed possible. This is just one section of our arc, explained Horizon Song, leading them along a path that formed beneath their feet as they walked. We have brought samples of our world with us, hoping they might survive somewhere new. Daeho, the team's biologist, couldn't stop staring at the ceiling hundreds of meters above, where something like clouds formed and dissipated in patterns. Your ship defies our understanding of physics, he murmured, taking readings on his tablet. Yet your understanding of adaptation defies our comprehension, replied the alien. That is why we are here. As they traveled deeper into the ship, they began to see more Arcturians going about what seemed like daily routines. Some stopped to watch the humans pass, their crystalline bodies shifting colors rapidly. What Jiwoo would later learn was their equivalent of excited whispering, Horizon Song, brought them to a central chamber where a dozen Arcturians waited, their bodies arranged in formations that somehow conveyed authority. The Council of Continuance, the guide explained, are leaders in this desperate journey. The largest of the aliens stepped forward, its form pulsing with deep purple light. I am Endseeker, first voice of the Council. For 40 generations, we have known our star would eventually make our world uninhabitable. We prepared, we built this vessel, but we failed to anticipate how quickly our people would. The alien paused, searching for the right word. Break. Jinhee, the team's psychologist, tilted her head. Break? Show them, Endseeker commanded, and the walls of the chamber transformed into windows overlooking a vast interior space. Thousands of Arcturians moved about, but something was clearly wrong. Many stood completely still, their colors faded to dull grays. Others moved in repetitive, purposeless patterns. Despair sickness, explained Horizon Song quietly. When our people lose hope, they begin to crystallize permanently. Over 20% of our population is now affected. Jiwoo glanced at Jinhee, who nodded slightly. She understood the implications. This wasn't just an environmental crisis. It was a psychological one. We've been observing humanity for nearly a century, continued Endseeker. Your species has faced extinction-level threats multiple times. Climate catastrophe, pandemic disease, resource depletion, even your own weapons of mass destruction. Yet each time you not only survived but emerged stronger. The wall shifted again, showing historical footage of Earth. Hurricane-ravaged cities being rebuilt, reforestation projects turning deserts green, underwater habitats thriving where coastlines once stood. Our evolutionary path was different, said another council member. Our world was stable for millions of years. We never developed your adaptability because we never needed it. We mastered technology, But we cannot master despair. That night, or what passed for night on the alien vessel, the human team gathered in their assigned quarters to discuss what they'd seen. The Arcturians had provided them with a large dome-shaped room that constantly adjusted to mimic Earth. Conditions. They're dying of hopelessness, Jinhee said, pacing across the floor. Their physiology is literally crystallizing because they can't imagine a future. Taewoo, the environmental engineer, snorted. Ironic, isn't it? They can build ships that travel between stars, but they can't handle bad news. It's not funny, Jiwoo snapped. Their entire civilization is at risk. I didn't say it was funny, Taewoo replied. I said it was ironic. They're technologically centuries ahead of us, but emotionally they're like children. They never had to develop psychological resilience. Hyunbin, the youngest member of the team and their communications specialist, looked up from his tablet. You know what's strange? They keep talking about how we've overcome so many disasters, but they're not mentioning the cost. Millions died in the climate wars. Half of coastal Asia is underwater. They're romanticizing our suffering. A thoughtful silence fell over the group. Finally, Jiwoo spoke. Maybe that's part of what they need to learn, not just how to survive, but how to accept. Loss is part of survival. The next morning, the Arcturians took them on a tour of what they called the memory halls, vast chambers where the history of their civilization was preserved in living crystalline records. The humans watched in awe as scenes from an alien world played out around them, the rise of their civilization, their first steps into space, the discovery of other worlds. For 10,000 years we have known peace, Horizon Song told them. No wars, no significant natural disasters, no scarcity. Sounds boring, Minjin, the team's geologist, muttered under his breath. But as the historical record approached recent times, the images grew darker. Their once golden sun began to redden. Radiation levels rose and the beautiful landscapes of Arcturus IV started to wither. The final images showed massive evacuation operations as millions of Arcturians boarded city ships like the one they now stood in. Only 11 ships escaped, said Horizon Song, its colors dimming to somber blues. The others, there was not enough time. Later that day, Endseeker revealed their true purpose. We need more than your environmental expertise, the alien leader admitted. We need to understand how you maintain hope when logic dictates there should be none. This concept is foreign to us. Our mathematics predicted our son's death and we accepted it as inevitable. But you humans, you rage against inevitability. You refuse to accept ends. This quality may save us all. Jiwoo looked around at her team, seeing the weight of responsibility settling on their shoulders. They had come expecting to provide technical assistance, not to teach an advanced alien species how to hope. We'll help you, she said finally. But you need to understand something about humans. Our hope isn't blind optimism. It's born from our struggles, not despite them. We can teach you our environmental techniques, but learning to hope. She paused, searching for the right words. That might be the harder lesson. Back on Earth, the revelation that aliens had come seeking human help sparked fierce debate. Emergency sessions of the United Nations stretched into days as representatives argued over how to respond to the Arcturian plea. The chamber was divided, with alliances forming and dissolving as new information arrived from Jiwoo's team aboard the alien vessel. This is the opportunity of a millennium, declared the representative from Brazil, her voice rising above the murmurs. They're offering technologies we can barely comprehend in exchange for our help. And what if that help fails? Countered the Nigerian delegate. Will they turn desperate? Will they decide Earth suits their needs better than whatever backup plan we create? President Junho Lee of the Korean Union rose to speak. At 73, he was among the oldest world leaders, having lived through both the Mumbai flooding and the North American dust crisis. His weathered face appeared on screens around the chamber. We're forgetting something fundamental, he said, his voice quiet but firm. When a neighbor comes to your door saying their house is on fire, you don't first calculate what you might gain by helping. Humanity has survived because when disaster strikes, we come together. These beings have traveled across stars to ask for our assistance. How we respond will define our species for generations to come. His words shifted the mood in the chamber. By evening, a resolution passed. Earth would help the Arcturians, but with clear conditions to protect humanity's interests. Meanwhile, aboard the city ship, Jiwoo's team had been working around the clock to understand the Arcturians' crisis. Each specialist had been paired with alien counterparts, and the cultural exchanges were proving just as valuable as the technical ones. Hyun Kim, the environmental systems expert, stood before a three-dimensional model of Ganymede, one of Jupiter's moons. Around him, 7 Arcturians observed with their strange, still attentiveness. The problem isn't just technical, Hyun explained, manipulating the hologram. Your species evolved in perfect harmony with your environment. Ours didn't. We've always had to adapt or die. The tallest Arcturian, who called itself Pattern Weaver, shifted colors in what Hyun had learned was confusion. But your adaptations were inefficient. Millions died in your climate disasters. Hyun nodded grimly. Yes. That's the part you're struggling to understand. Humans don't expect perfect solutions. We try, we fail, we lose people we love, and then we try again. That's why we're still here. In another section of the ship, Min Seo-jung, the team's cultural anthropologist, sat in a circle with younger Arcturians. They had been asking endless questions about human art, music, and literature. Why do humans create stories about imaginary disasters? Asked one, its colors rippling with curiosity. We have analyzed your fiction and found that 62% involves threats to survival. Min Seo smiled. We tell stories about our fears to prepare ourselves emotionally. It's like a rehearsal for tragedy. But the stories often contain illogical solutions, objected another young Arcturian. That's because the solutions aren't the point, Min Seo replied. The point is showing that even in the worst circumstances, there's still value in trying. When the United Nations decision reached the city ship, the exchange became official. Earth would send 1,000 specialists, environmental engineers, crisis managers, psychologists, and survival experts to help the Arcturians. In return, the aliens would share specific technologies, advanced medical techniques, more efficient energy systems, and materials science beyond Earth's current capabilities. Critically, the agreement excluded weapons technology and artificial intelligence systems. Despite their desperation, the Arcturians readily accepted these terms. As N-Seeker explained to Jiwoo, we have no concept of weaponizing technology. War is foreign to us. The first major breakthrough came 3 weeks into the official exchange. Sun-hee Park, an atmospheric specialist from Seoul University, discovered that the Arcturians' attempts to shield their colony ships from radiation were actually intensifying the problem. Their protective fields were perfect for their original sun, but catastrophically wrong for Earth's solar system. You've been thinking too perfectly, she explained to the alien engineers. Sometimes a partial solution that allows for adaptation is better than a perfect solution that fails when conditions change. The Arcturians struggled with this concept. Their entire civilization was built around mathematical precision and perfect harmony. The idea that imperfection might be advantageous seemed like nonsense to them. That evening, Hyun found himself in a heated discussion with Pattern Weaver in what the humans had nicknamed the Philosophy Garden, a beautiful crystalline space, where concepts could be visualized in 3 dimensions as they were discussed. Your species treats struggle as meaningful, Pattern Weaver said, its form glowing with intense blue light. This contradicts rational thought. Suffering should be minimized, not valued. Hyun sighed, watching as his words took shape in the air between them. The Arcturians' way of ensuring precise communication. We don't value suffering itself. We value what it teaches us. Without winter, there is no spring. A poetic fallacy, countered the alien. One state does not require its opposite, but appreciation might, Hyun suggested. Could your people truly appreciate their perfect world if they had never known imperfection? The alien went still, its colors fading to a thoughtful gray. The question hung in the air, literally visible between them as the Philosophy Garden captured the concept. 2 months into the exchange, the cultural impact was flowing both ways. The human specialists had begun to adopt elements of Arcturian communication, particularly their habit of silent contemplation before speaking. The aliens, meanwhile, were experimenting with human concepts like music, humor, and even games. Young Mi, Cho, one of the psychological counselors, organized what she called hope workshops, where Arcturians suffering from despair sickness could interact with humans who had survived various Earth disasters. The results were promising. Several Arcturians who had begun to crystallize showed renewed color and movement after these sessions. "They're not learning to be human," Young Mi explained to Jiwoo during their weekly briefing. "They're learning that adaptability doesn't mean abandoning who you are. It means finding new ways to be yourself when circumstances change." The most profound moment came during an unexpected power failure in one section of the city ship. As emergency systems struggled to come online, several Arcturians began to show signs of panic, their forms becoming rigid and pale. A group of human engineers led by Do-hyun Kang immediately organized a response team. "We don't need the main systems," Do-hyun shouted, his voice carrying through the darkened chamber. "We can rig a temporary solution. Everyone who can move, bring those crystalline power nodes to the center." The humans acted without hesitation, improvising tools and forming a chain to pass the heavy nodes. After a moment's hesitation, several Arcturians joined them. Within an hour, they had created a makeshift power relay that restored basic functions. As the lights came back on, Endseeker approached Do-hyun. "You did not have a plan," the alien observed. Do-hyun wiped sweat from his forehead. "No time for plans. Sometimes you just have to trust that you'll figure it out as you go." "This is what we must learn," Endseeker said quietly, its colors shifting to a deep, resolute purple. "Not just your technology, but your faith in uncertainty." 6 months into the mission, life had settled into a productive routine. The human team had expanded to over 300 specialists working across the Arcturian city ship. Progress was slow but steady. The aliens were learning adaptive thinking while humans gained insights into technologies they'd only dreamed about. Both sides celebrated small victories, from successfully modifying radiation shields to the first Arcturian attempt at creating music. That morning, Jiwoo was reviewing habitat designs with Horizon Song when the alarms began. Not the sharp, urgent sound of human warnings, but a haunting, oscillating tone that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "What's happening?" she asked, already reaching for her communicator. The Arcturian's colors flashed in patterns Jiwoo had never seen before, rapid pulses of red and white that seemed to stutter across its crystalline form. "The sun," it said simply. "Our home, sun." They rushed to the observation deck, where dozens of Arcturians had gathered, their bodies unnaturally still as they watched the massive view screen. The image showed their home star, now just a distant point of light suddenly flaring with terrifying brightness. "Coronal mass ejection," explained Dabin, the team's astrophysicist, who had joined them breathlessly. "Massive one, far beyond what their predictive models suggested." Endseeker approached, its normally imposing form now seeming fragile somehow. "Our monitoring systems report radiation levels on our homeworld have increased by 300%. The biosphere collapse is accelerating. Those who remained behind..." The alien's voice trailed off, colors dimming to a dull gray. Within hours, the full implications became clear. The Arcturians' carefully calculated timeline, which had projected several years to establish a new colony, had just collapsed. Their homeworld would be completely uninhabitable within months, not years. And worse, 3 other Arcturian ships that had planned to rendezvous with them were now reporting critical damage from the solar event. "We're looking at the extinction of their species," Hyun said quietly during the emergency meeting of the human leadership team, "unless we can accelerate our plans dramatically." Over the next few days, the mood aboard the city ship darkened palpably. The Arcturians, despite their alien physiology, showed clear signs of what humans would call grief and panic. More cases of despair sickness appeared, with dozens of Arcturians fading to gray, their movements becoming slower until some stopped moving altogether. Then came the first troubling sign. Jiwoo was awakened in the middle of the night by an urgent message from Minseo. "You need to come to the council chamber," the anthropologist said, her voice tight with tension. Now. When Jiwoo arrived, she found the council gathered in what appeared to be the middle of a heated debate, something she'd never witnessed among the normally methodical Arcturians. Their colors flashed in chaotic patterns and their crystalline bodies resonated with discordant tones. "What's happening?" she asked Minseo. "They're considering options," Minseo replied grimly. "Including some we won't like." Endseeker noticed their presence and shifted toward them, the aliens' colors stabilizing somewhat. "Captain Park, we face extinction unless radical measures are taken." "We understand," Jiwoo said carefully. "That's why we're accelerating the terraforming plans for Ganymede." "Too slow," countered another council member, its form pulsing with angry red light. "Even with your help, Ganymede will not support life for decades. We need immediate sanctuary." Aoim. Chill ran down Jiwoo's spine as she realized what they were suggesting. "You're talking about Earth." "It is the only logical solution," Endseeker said, colors shifting to what Jiwoo had learned to recognize as their version of regret. "Your world could support a limited Arcturian population in specific regions. The Antarctic continent and portions of your northern territories would require minimal adaptation." "You're talking about an invasion," Jiwoo said flatly. "We prefer to see it as shared habitation," replied Endseeker. "We would provide technological compensation far beyond our current exchange agreements." Jiwoo felt a surge of anger. "That's not your decision to make. Earth is home to billions of humans. You can't just move in because it's convenient." "Convenience?" The word resonated through the chamber as another council member moved forward, its colors flashing vivid orange. "We face extinction. What would humans do in our position? Your history shows you have fought wars over far less." The confrontation might have escalated further if not for an unexpected interruption. Hyun stepped forward from where he had been quietly observing. "May I address the council?" he asked. Endseeker shifted slightly, indicating permission. "You're making the same mistake again," Hyun said, his voice surprisingly calm. "You're looking for the perfect solution, one that guarantees survival with absolute certainty. But that's not how survival works in an uncertain universe." "Explain," demanded the angry council member. "If you force your way to Earth, you might survive physically, but you'll destroy everything that makes your civilization worth preserving." Hyun continued. "You'll become invaders, colonizers, exactly the kind of species you've always prided yourselves on not being." The chamber went silent. Even the angry council members' colors quieted to a thoughtful blue. "There's another way," Hyun said. "One that honors both our peoples. But it requires something difficult for your species. It requires faith in an uncertain outcome." Over the next 3 days, human and Arcturian experts worked feverishly on Hyun's proposal, a bold modification of their original terraforming plan. Instead of the careful, decades-long approach they had initially designed, Hyun proposed using a combination of Arcturian energy technology and human climate engineering to jumpstart the process on Ganymede. "It's risky," admitted Sungmin, the terraform engineer, during the presentation to both human and Arcturian leadership. "The accelerated timeline means we have fewer safeguards, less testing. But our models suggest we could create a livable environment in specific habitats within 8 months, not decades." "And the chances of success?" asked Endseeker. Sungmin glanced at Hyun before answering. "About 60%. A murmur ran through the Arcturian Council. For a species used to certainty, a 40% chance of failure was almost unthinkable. "What happens if we fail?" asked one council member. "Then we try something else," Jiwoo said firmly. "That's what humans do. We don't give up just because the first plan might not work." The debate raged for hours. Some council members insisted the Earth option was the only logical choice. Others, particularly those who had worked closely with humans, began to argue for Hyun's approach. Finally, Horizon Song stepped into the center of the chamber. Until now, the guide had rarely spoken in council meetings. "I have observed humans closely," it said, colors shifting to deep, resolute blue. Their greatness comes not from always succeeding, but from how they face failure. If we relocate to Earth by force, we save our bodies but lose our spirit. I would rather attempt a worthy creation and fail than survive through conquest. One by one, the council members shifted colors to indicate agreement. Even the most reluctant eventually conceded. The decision was made. They would attempt the terraforming of Ganymede at an unprecedented pace with all the risks that entailed. As the meeting dispersed, Endseeker approached Hyun. "You have asked us to trust in uncertainty," the alien leader said. "This is perhaps the greatest challenge we have ever faced. Not the technical problem, but the spiritual one." Hyun nodded. Sometimes hope is the only logical response to an illogical universe. 20 years later, Ji-woo Park stood at the viewport of her small apartment, watching the artificial sunrise over Ganymede's New Horizon colony. At 63, her once jet-black hair was now streaked with silver, and fine lines marked the corners of her eyes, badges of honor from 2 decades of building something unprecedented in human history. The view before her would have seemed impossible during those desperate early days. What had once been a barren, icy moon now hosted a sprawling settlement under vast transparent domes. Inside these protected environments, carefully engineered, ecosystems thrived, trees from Earth growing alongside crystalline structures that housed Arcturian plant equivalents. Above it all, massive energy collectors transformed Jupiter's radiation into usable power, their design a perfect blend of human ingenuity and Arcturian precision. A gentle chime announced a visitor. "Enter," Ji-woo called, not turning from the view. Horizon Song glided into the room, its crystalline form now bearing intricate patterns that hadn't existed 20 years ago. The Arcturian equivalent of aging, she had learned. Where the alien once shifted between simple color patterns, its body now displayed complex swirls and textures that told the story of its experiences. "The children are ready," it said, its voice carrying the musical quality that all Arcturians had developed since learning about human music. Ji-woo smiled. "I'll be right there." They traveled together through the settlement's central corridor, passing humans and Arcturians going about their daily lives. The early awkwardness between the species had faded over the years, replaced by a comfortable familiarity. Small human children pointed excitedly at Arcturian crystal crafters shaping building materials with nothing but focused thought. Young Arcturians, born on Ganymede, never having seen their homeworld, practiced human-style painting under the guidance of an elderly art teacher. "I remember when the first dome collapsed," Ji-woo said quietly as they passed the memorial garden, where crystal structures and earth plants intertwined to commemorate those lost during the colony's difficult early years. "Everyone said we had failed." "By Arcturian standards we had," Horizon Song replied. 37% of the initial terraforming systems malfunctioned. By our old way of thinking, that was unacceptable. But you rebuilt. We learned from you that failure is not an endpoint, but a lesson. The aliens' colors shifted to warm gold. Amusement. Though I believe humans learned some precision from us as well. The second dome design was considerably more efficient. They arrived at Harmony Park, the colony's first public recreational space. Nearly 100 young Arcturians had gathered there, along with their human counterparts from the settlement school. At the center stood Hyun Kim, now in his 70s, leaning slightly on a cane made from Ganymede materials. "Ambassador Park," he greeted with a small bow. "Right on time." The children quieted as Ji-woo took her place beside Hyun. For a moment she was struck by how natural it seemed to see human and Arcturian children together. The human children, bundled against the artificial environment's carefully maintained cool temperature, fidgeted and whispered to each other. The young Arcturians, their bodies smaller and more vividly colored than the adults, maintained the characteristic stillness of their species, though Ji-woo noted with amusement that several were subtly shifting colors in what she recognized as their version of excited chatter. "Today marks 20 years since the first landing," Hyun began, his voice still strong despite his age. "I've been asked to tell you the story of how we came to be here." A small human girl raised her hand. "Teacher Mijin says we wouldn't be here if the sun didn't burp." Is that true? Laughter rippled through the adult humans while the Arcturian children flashed confused patterns of color. In a way, yes, Yun smiled. Sometimes the worst disasters lead to the greatest opportunities. When the Arcturian sun released that enormous solar flare, it seemed like the end of everything. Instead, it forced us to try something bold. Were you scared? Asked a young Arcturian, its form pulsing with curious green light. Terrified, Hyun admitted. The original plan gave us a 60% chance of success. After the third dome collapse, those odds dropped to less than 30%. But you didn't give up, said another child. No, humans aren't very good at giving up. Hyun glanced at Horizon Song. And the Arcturians, it turns out, are excellent learners. After the ceremony, Jiwoo excused herself from the celebrations. There was one more appointment on her schedule, one she couldn't miss. She made her way to the transit hub and boarded a shuttle bound for Earth. The journey that once took weeks now required only hours, thanks to the propulsion technology developed through human-Arcturian collaboration. The United Nations headquarters in New Nairobi buzzed with activity as she arrived. Representatives from every Earth nation had gathered for this historic occasion, along with a delegation of Arcturians led by Endseeker, now the eldest of their kind. Jiwoo took her seat in the gallery as Endseeker approached the podium. The Tao, ancient alien's form had grown more complex over the decades with patterns that seemed almost architectural in their intricacy. As it began to speak, the chamber fell silent. 20 years ago, we came to you as refugees, our civilization facing extinction. Endseeker began, its voice resonating through the hall. We possessed advanced technology, but lacked something far more precious, the ability to face uncertainty with courage. The alien paused, its colors shifting to a deep, thoughtful blue. We sought your help with terraforming, but you gave us something far more valuable. You taught us that adaptation is not merely a technical challenge, but a philosophical one. That true resilience comes not from avoiding failure, but from how one responds to it. Endseeker's form brightened. Today, I am honored to announce that the Ganymede colony has achieved full sustainability. Our joint outpost on Europa has confirmed water-based life forms beneath its ice, and our combined scientific teams have identified 17 potentially habitable worlds within reach of our shared technology. Applause erupted from the human delegates. The Arcturians responded in their own way, a synchronized color display that rippled through their delegation like silent fireworks. Later, at a small reception, Jiwoo found herself standing beside Endseeker, watching Earth's sunset through the vast windows. Did you ever imagine this outcome, she asked, when you first approached Earth? The alien was silent for a moment. No, it finally admitted. In our desperation, we hoped only for technical assistance. The transformation of our civilization was unexpected. For us too, Jiwoo said with a small smile. 20 years ago, we were still arguing about whether to help you at all. And now our futures are intertwined, Endseeker observed. My grandchildren would not recognize the Arcturians of my youth. They create art, they play games, some even tell jokes, though. I confess the human sense of humor remains somewhat mysterious to me. Jiwoo laughed. Well, you've changed us too. Humans have never been this united or forward-looking. There's something about staring up at the stars alongside another intelligent species that makes our old conflicts seem small. Endseekers. Colors shifted to a pattern Jiwoo had learned was their expression of profound agreement. Perhaps that is the universe's design, that different intelligences need each other to reach their full potential. As night fell over the Earth, lights began to appear across the planet's surface. At the same time, the first stars became visible in the darkening sky. Among them, Jupiter shone brightly, its moons too distant to see with the naked eye but present. In their thoughts, what comes next? Asked Endseeker. Jiwoo smiled. That's the best part. We don't know for certain, but whatever it is, we'll face it together.